The John LeBang Show has been known to make people laugh, sing, think, scream, throw things in rage, and generally lose their minds. Listener discretion is advised.
Worldwide and out to the greater universe, you're listening to the John LeBang Show.
Well, what a week, huh? Whew. Welcome, my friends. I'm telling you, there's so much to report tonight, so much to discuss that it's going to be really hard to get it all in. And I have to admit, I'm having difficulty on how I want to proceed with the show because we're dealing with an extremely delicate issue, and if you say something too far one way or the other, you're going to upset a lot of people. And I'm trying to get out some information that the soundbite media seems to ignore. That's all we've seen all week. And that's what these hearings between Ms. Blasey Ford and Mr. Kavanaugh were about. It was all about sound bites and what sound bites they could grab to play on the mainstream manufactured elite news. I'm going to call them the soundbite media now. That's it. I think I'm going to join in the game of soundbite media. Whatever happened 35 years ago, it bears little relevance on what is happening today, because it's not about a lady who has had a traumatic moment, as she describes it, a traumatic moment that carried on through her life, and it's not about a guy being confirmed to the Supreme Court who's being accused of something for all practical purposes cannot be proven one way or the other. So now we have to do the he said, she said thing. And because we're going to participate in soundbite media, ladies and gentlemen, because we're going to do that, we have some interesting sound bites that we're going to be playing for you. Now, it's not the sound bites you got in the mainstream media. There are a lot from Kavanaugh, so we're going to just push that aside. We know where everybody stands on where they think about Kavanaugh. His background has been thoroughly investigated. He's had 6 separate FBI investigations into his background, because that's what you got to do when you start moving up the chain in the federal court system. They got to check your background. Make sure you're not a Chinese agent like Dianne Feinstein had, working for her for, 20 years or something? When you're going to be a federal judge, the FBI, and you've got to submit to these, the FBI does background searches on you. They check you out. That's what the FBI does. The FBI doesn't convict anybody of anything. Yet you don't really get that in the mainstream manufactured news. But, there is a Democrat out there that knows exactly what the FBI does. This is Mr. Joe Biden. Let's hear what he had to say.
The next person that refers to an FBI report as being worth anything obviously doesn't understand anything. FBI explicitly does not, in this or any other case, reach a conclusion. Period. The reason why we cannot rely on the FBI report, you wouldn't like it if we did, because it is inconclusive.
Oh, the FBI doesn't do anything but interview people, gather data, gather information, and then pass it on. That's interesting. Now, let's get past that, because we're really focusing on what is happening to a single man. And that part of my reason for doing this, ladies and gentlemen, is to protect men, because there has been a precedent set with this Blasey Ford, Judge Kavanaugh Supreme Court nomination process that can come back to haunt men for decades. And I don't want men to go through this because it's already hard enough to be a man in this world, especially if you're some straight white guy. It's a tough world out there because everything's your fault and you don't get credit for jack squat. But men, if you're listening, at this point, any action that you do as a young man, as a adolescent, can come back to haunt you. I mean, we're almost to the point to where some girl who got pushed over by a boy in a classroom in 3rd grade can come back to get him and say it was assault at that age. But since we're doing the soundbite media thing this fine hour, I'd like to begin with the chair of the hearing, Mr. Grassley, and I'm going to let him explain to you how this whole process is nothing more than a political hack job. And they don't care about Mrs. Blasey Ford. They want to stop Kavanaugh at all costs.
I lament that how this hearing has come about. On July the 9th, 2018, the President announced Judge Kavanaugh's nomination to serve on the Supreme Court. Judge Kavanaugh has served on the most important federal appellate court for 12 years. Before that, he held some of the most sensitive positions in the federal government. The President added Judge Kavanaugh to his short list of Supreme Court more than 9 months ago in November 2017. As part of Judge Kavanaugh's nomination to the Supreme Court, the FBI conducted its 6th full field background investigation of Judge Kavanaugh since 1993, 25 years ago. Nowhere in any of these 6 FBI reports, which committee investigators have reviewed on a bipartisan basis, was there a whiff of any issue at all related in any way to inappropriate sexual behavior.
It's all coming out now. All coming out now. Isn't that interesting?
Dr. Ford first raised her allegations in a secret letter to the ranking member nearly 2 months ago in July.
2 months ago in July, ladies and gentlemen, and it's just coming out in the past few weeks. Keep that in your head.
This letter was secret from July 30th, September 13th July 30th until September 13th when I first heard about it. The ranking member took no action.
The ranking member he's talking about is Dianne Feinstein. We continue.
The letter wasn't shared with me, our colleagues, or my staff. These allegations could have been investigated in a way that maintained the confidentiality that Dr. Ford requested.
And we'll get to that. You don't know that, ladies and gentlemen, because that's not being reported by the mainstream media. And why would it be? The soundbite media doesn't care about an individual's privacy, and neither does the Democrat Party. We'll continue.
Before his hearing, Judge Kavanaugh met privately with 65 senators, including the ranking member. But the ranking member didn't ask Judge Kavanaugh about the allegations when she met with him privately in August. The Senate Judiciary Committee held its 4-day public hearing from September 4th to September 7th. Judge Kavanaugh testified for more than 32 hours in public. We held a closed session for members to ask sensitive questions on the last evening, which the ranking member did not attend.
So the night Feinstein could have asked him about this in private if they didn't want to make it public because they were keeping it confidential for the lady, and I can understand that if these allegations are true. Feinstein had an opportunity to ask him a direct question about this and didn't. They kept the story, they kept the whole allegation quiet until just a few weeks ago. We continue.
Judge Kavanaugh answered nearly 1,300 written questions submitted by senators after the hearing, more than all prior Supreme Court nominees. Throughout this period, we did not know about the ranking member's secret evidence.
So they've given this guy the biggest anal cavity search of any Supreme Court nominee in the history of the world before all these allegations came out. And in the 11th hour, Dianne Feinstein and the deplorable Democrats dropped the bomb.
Then, only at an 11th hour, on the eve of Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation vote, did the ranking member refer the allegations to the FBI. And then, sadly, the allegations were leaked to the press. And that's where Dr. Ford was mistreated. This is a shameful way to treat our witness, who insisted on confidentiality.
So apparently Dianne Feinstein broke a promise to keep things confidential and leaked the stuff to the media. Boy, doesn't that sound like the FBI and Strzok and all that? And James Comey? I mean, that's the tactics being employed here. Now, I won't play any more Mr. Grassley. One, because he's just not a very good speaker. I tell you what, he couldn't do a radio show. He's just too slow. And he messes up way too often. And even I'm not perfect at that. I have my issues speaking, but man, this guy. Now, with that being said, we're going to move on to Mrs. Ford's testimony. And in this first soundbite that you probably didn't get in the mainstream media, she says this.
I spent most every day at the Columbia Country Club in Chevy Chase, Maryland.
Wow, I had no idea there was a Chevy Chase, Maryland. How ironic that Chevy Chase has been in the news lately as well. We continue.
I don't have all the answers, and I don't remember as much as I would like to.
She doesn't remember everything she'd like to, and she doesn't have all the answers. Yet she came forward about an incident that happened over 30 years ago. We continue with her description of how the night went.
When I got to the small gathering, people were drinking beer in a small living room, family room type area on the first floor of the house. I drank one beer. Brett and Mark were visibly drunk. Early in the evening, I went up a very narrow set of stairs leading from the living room to a second floor to use the restroom. When I got to the top of the stairs, I was pushed from behind into a bedroom across from the bathroom.
Now here's a question for Mrs. Blasey Ford, because you have to ask this. Were they all heading up together? Were they all heading up together because they were having a good time and hanging out?
I couldn't see who pushed me.
Now she admits that she didn't see who pushed her. And believe me, folks, I am not trying to attack this lady's integrity. But if we're going to take her testimony and use it as evidence against Mr. Kavanaugh, whose life will be destroyed, we have to know all the details. Are we not allowed to ask these questions because she claims she's a victim? Don't we want to know? She said she went up to the bathroom. Obviously, it was with those two guys. She didn't say they were hiding up there. So she walked up the stairs to go to the bathroom with two guys hanging out, partying. I would have asked these questions not because I want to be a jerk, but because we have a man's life on the line. And we have to make sure she, who was in therapy and who has repressed memories of the entire event, and if the event happened, we have to know everything that happened so we understand the circumstances to which they happened. Because we're judging a man. I know to some, a man isn't as important as the women. But this is a person's life, and he's got kids, and he's forever going to be tainted with this. Let's continue.
And I thought that Brett was accidentally going to kill me.
To me, this is extremely telling. Something was going on, and she in her mind thought, oh, Brett's going to accidentally kill me. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to insult this lady. I don't want to diminish what possibly happened there. But if you're in the process of being sexually assaulted, you're not going to worry about if the guy's going to accidentally. You're going to be concerned that he is